Hey everybody, I'm going to make pizza dough again today and probably tell a Mafia story. I don't have a lot of those, but I do have some. And right now, I put the dough together. So last time I told you that I would tell you the ingredients. This is what the Verde flour bag looks like. It wasn't that expensive. The pizza lasted forever, the dough. I made probably 4 pizzas out of the first set. Thought, what am I gonna do with all this stuff? And then I put it back in the fridge and let it sit for 3 days. And still made great pizzas. I was shocked. I was like, wow. I even made a little bit of fascia bread out of it. So that was really tasty and well worth it. So I'm back to making pizza today. And the recipe that I gave you last time is 500 grams of flour, which is a Verde, 325 grams of water, 10 grams of the sea salt, and 100 grams of the active sourdough. That's this doubled on the scale, and we've got that started. So I'm gonna put this up to the side. I just wanted you to see the bag. And I got this going. My poor husband's sick upstairs. Today is a work day, but he got food poisoning, not from me, not funny. He drank a protein drink after it had been left out in the sun all day. It was supposed to be refrigerated. Left it in his backpack from going to the gym. Came back a day later and thought it was one of the good ones he had pulled out of the fridge and drank it last night. And he has been so sick, I've been thinking about taking him to the doctor, but he says he's okay, so he's toughing it out upstairs and just wants some sleep. So I'm gonna make a whole bunch of stuff today in the kitchen. So this is the pizza. This is the first mix of that pizza dough in the bowl. So I'm gonna show you. What I do is I tuck my fingers down the side of the bowl and pull up and capture air, and tuck my fingers down and pull up, and it tends to make the dough very much elastic. So if you can see, it's starting to develop that gluten strand, and I'm digging my fingers in kind of like Captain Hook and pulling it up in the middle and putting it down. And I'm rotating the bowl as I go, much like I guess a KitchenAid mixer stand would do, but I haven't had any success. I'm sure there's people out there that are like, why is she using her hands? That's so messy. I figure I'm gonna make a big mess today. So this is starting to get really nice. It's a nice warm day. Here it's probably like 75, maybe even 80. Went for a run today. Well, not really a run. Like 1.3 miles to a Starbucks, getting a Starbucks coffee and then walking back with your dog really doesn't qualify for someone that used to run marathons. I did do it with a pack on because I'm trying to prepare myself for something. And you know, the dog's just a puppy and I don't want to overrun him. Puppies are different than full-grown dogs. Their bones are still growing, so you have to be careful. But really, the puppy wasn't worn out. I just, you know, I'm old and I'm trying to get back in shape. I'm in pickleball shape, but I'm not in running shape. So I got the dough and it's coming along really well. It's snapping back. It kind of like pulls back like bubble gum, like some Hubba Bubba bubble gum when you're little that you have on your tongue that you work in your mouth. And that's kind of the consistency. Looks really pretty. We're gonna put a lid on that and pause it off. So again, that's 500 grams of Verde flour, 325 grams of cold water, 10 grams of fine sea salt, and 100 grams of active sourdough starter. This is my starter. That's what it's looking like. I just used one up. We're gonna make a variety of things. So I'm gonna use discard and regular starter today. And we're gonna pause right here and I'm gonna put a lid on that. Hey, I'm back. I got my shower cap on my pizza dough, which I'm gonna do stretch and folds in a bit. I have my 1,000 grams of flour. This is for my bread. I'm using King Arthur, and then I'm using the Costco brand for wheat, which I showed you on a different date. This is the King Arthur bread flour. So I'm doing a 400-600 ratio of 400 wheat, 600 white, and I'm gonna do a rustic rosemary. And I don't want it too wheaty, but I do like the earthiness of the wheat, but I don't want it to be too much wheat. And then it's 200 grams of starter and 748 grams of water. So I'm gonna try to get those numbers up on my scale that has been tiered. This is my starter, and I use some of this one. So I'm using a little bit of everything so I can refresh them. And instead of throwing it out to do discard, we are making bread today, so that's a good thing. Don't know what happened to my scale, it just went off. That's not good. All right, we'll take it off. So we're gonna put the whole thing on. I think I need 100 more grams, close to. I already used some. That was a script. The scale went off. I don't know why. Shit happens. We're gonna try to measure out 100 more grams after we tiered the scale. Nice and stretchy, right? All right, that should be it. I'm gonna stir that starter up into my water so we don't have big chunks. Turn off my scale. I wonder if I hit that with my body. And we're gonna get this lovely milky water and chunk all that stuff up. I made a little bit of a well in my flour. And this is the salt that I'm using. And I use Fiji water, like I've said before. I'm gonna pour that all in. Probably needs a bigger bowl. Ooh, that's right up to the brim. All right. So that bowl's a little bit smaller than I expected to do. This is a quadruple recipe. If you're gonna do a single recipe for a small loaf, it's 250 grams of bread flour, 6 grams of salt, 187 grams of spring water, 50 grams of starter. So that's if you just want to do a nice small loaf. Not everybody has a bunch of people in their family. Not everybody comes from 12 kids. I make big batches so I can freeze the bread, share with friends. And I think the dough works better when it's in a larger batch. I don't know why that is. It seems very unusual, but it seems like you have to be much more precise when you're getting a smaller loaf than a big loaf. And you're doing a big batch for 4 loaves. It seems that the precision can be slightly off when you have room for some error. So we're gonna put in the dough hook, get this started, and then I'm gonna put my hand in and do the same thing. So since I'm making what I would consider pizza and Italian bread, rosemary, olive oil, all those lovely things from Italy that they gave us. I'll tell you a story. When I first became an agent, in the FBI Academy, you have suite mates that live in your room with you, much like a dorm in college, and I was lucky enough to get 3 really nice girls, which having girls at all in the academy at that point in time in 1991 is pretty unusual. But we probably had 13 girls in our class out of 50 students, and that was a lot of women, at least at the FBI, which is a male-dominated field in 1991. And I'm very happy because I have a girlfriend across the room. We share a Jack and Jill bathroom. My roommate's name's Ann. She's a super athlete, a collegiate athlete. And then Rebecca is with Kim, but Kim and I become best friends for life. And we go out every weekend as young girls do, and at the academy, we're serious during the week. Our weekends are ours, and we go out, and we get close to graduation, and we're fast friends. In fact, I met my husband through Kim and Ann. My husband was at the academy at the same time in the class behind us, and he was supposed to interview the upperclassmen, which would have been us. So he's assigned to come interview Ann about who she is, because when you start out in the FBI, what you do is you go around the city and do applicant interviews, meaning if people are, if there's a judgeship, you go and interview all the friends and family and what their thoughts are, because judges get appointed most of the time for life. So those are very important. And instead of working crime right out of the academy and throwing somebody into something that's top secret, they want you to learn the streets. So what they do is you get signed to applicants. So we're all practicing this at the academy. And my husband at that time is supposed to interview my roommate. And they had a late night surveillance at the academy, a mock late night surveillance. And this was prior to cell phones, and he didn't show up for the scheduled interview, and Ann skipped a workout to wait for him, and he didn't show up. And I thought, like, what a jackass. Like, who is this guy? Who does he think he is? Like, he's a lower classman. Like, why does he think that he's better than us? And he's in the class to follow. And this is so completely far from the truth that we've invented this villain student that we think thinks he's hot shit because he's good looking, and we vilified him. So Ann decides that the rescheduled interview, she's going to make up bullshit. She's going to say that she's been specifically hired to be an ornithologist who studies birds, and she's hired to protect the Bird Species Act, and we're all laughing about this fake interview that she's going to give him. And sure enough, he doesn't manage to show up again because he's assigned to do something else, but he does send a note with a classman. So finally he comes to the door unannounced to do this interview, and Ann's out for a run or doing something important or studying in the library. And I decide to answer the door, and I see him, and he's like, "I'm here for Ann." And I'm like, "She's not here." And I just slam the door in his face. And it turns out that she does do this mock interview, but she throws him all sorts of bullshit, and we cackle about it like mean girls do, because, we weren't hired because we were super nice. and we're like, that teaches him for being, very handsome and thinking that we're waiting on him for his schedule. So, that is so far removed from his side of the story that I think, when you're out there dating and you're thinking about who you're going to go out with, and they make a mistake and you presume that it's intentional. It couldn't have been further. He tried to come and tell them that he needed to interview us, but they said, "Tough luck, we're your instructors, you have to be on the surveillance and you don't get a choice. The student will understand that, anything an instructor says takes precedence over something another student says." And what's really funny about this is that I later worked at the FBI Academy as an instructor for 4 years when I was pregnant with my second child. So that's a whole nother rash of stories. So that's the first initial meeting of my husband. We'll continue that later. So Kim and I graduate, and Kim is stunning. She has long blonde hair, down past her hips, and I'm just happy to be her sidekick, her wing woman, because everybody's always looking at Kim because she actually looks a little bit like Kim Bessinger, and I will see if I can find an old photo of her, but I'm thinking I'll just take her discards when we go out. So Kim, because she's so beautiful, she gets assigned to applicants, but she gets to help out on a Mafia case. And Mafia's everywhere. You know, they're not only in Jersey and in New York, they're everywhere. At least at that point in time, they're everywhere. And she tells me all about this case, and I'm like, oh, all I get to do is interviews for like the White House. This is horrible. How do you get to do all the fun stuff? So we decided to go out one night in Georgetown, and we're drinking heavy because, I don't know, we're young. And we're chit-chatting and not having any success. We're going out dancing, and we're all dolled up. And she's like, hey, let's go by the restaurant that's under investigation. I'm like, yeah, like we'll get dessert. So we decide that we're gonna go in, and she's gonna just point out the restaurant. It's absolutely innocent. And we go in the restaurant and we order dessert, and there's a whole table of guys that are under investigation that are the young, what I would call maybe the lieutenants of the organization. And Kim's so stunning that they immediately say, well, they buy our dessert, they tell us everything's free, drinks are on the house. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And then they tell their name, which is one of the primary people under investigation. And I'm like, oh my God, like we are like stuck in the thick of this. So Kim gives a fake name and I give a fake name. And we're chatting with these young men all night, getting their names, finding out who their friends' names are. And Monday rolls around after, you know, our hot weekend. I'm like, oh, you know, you got to tell your squad that you know all their names and you know who they're with. And, you know, we got tons of information. She's like, no, we'll be fired. I'm like, I didn't do it. I was just getting dessert. And she's like, okay, like, you know, we'll tell them. Well, we think we're going to get like in big trouble because we went to a mob-run restaurant with the intent of, you know, like kind of spying on them on the weekend without anybody directing us to do that. But they're thrilled because we have loads of intel from our night drinking and eating dessert with these young men. And they immediately want to make Kim, the hot one of the two friends, part of an undercover operation with another woman who's more established in the FBI named Marianne. And they proceed to run a case, started with us going out drinking and boozing it up. And I guess from stupid things, sometimes good things happen. And I know that the case did end up to be a success in the future, that they quickly replaced both the undercovers with, you have to go to undercover school. You can't, it's not like Silence of the Lambs where Jodie Foster gets assigned to a serial killer. That's just complete bullshit. Like, people are trained for months and months to learn how to do counter surveillance and undercover techniques and how not to be noticed, and they just don't throw people in the mix. Like, yes, they introduced you, but they put a seasoned agent in that actually had been trained in undercover schools, that had gone through all this stuff, and it was just nearly as an intro to take the more seasoned agent Marianne and put her into the thick of things that was highly trained. They didn't even consider me like that Irish girl, she doesn't fit in. But in the meantime, I find out that my husband, Greg, is from the same hometown as me. In fact, he has lived his whole life 3 miles from my home address, that when he was previously engaged to a woman, he used to run by my family home. He was also in the football league that I had a boyfriend that I dated for 7 years in Ohio, and he was on one of the opposing teams on the football team. He went to the neighboring local high school, and we were probably at parties, I don't know, 50 times and never even recognized each other or saw each other. And it turns out that he played a little bit of racquetball and I played a little bit of racquetball. And I remember there was this girl named Christy, and she's like, have you seen that hot guy at the new office? And I'm like, he kind of looks like an accountant. Which I didn't want to admit that I thought he was super cute. But she certainly had eyes for him. And I was like, well, I'm not going to tell her that I like him, because the first thing girls do when they find out that another girl likes them as they try to steal him, which he had already asked me to play racquetball, and I'm like, I'm not going to give her any inkling that I really like this guy, because if I do, she'll be after him. And she wasn't friends with me, so I had no loyalty or allegiance to her. So my husband and I started dating, and it turns out that we were from the same hometown, which made it super convenient. And he freeloaded off me for 5 years at my condo that I had bought. Well, not really, because he had an apartment, and he would say I was geographically undesirable because he had to drive 40 minutes in traffic to come see me. But all in all, it worked out really well. And that's my Mafia story while I'm making pizza. This is going to be the bread. And as you can see, woo, the gluten has developed in the other bowl. This is the wheat and white. Again, King Arthur flour. And then the Sourdough brand from Costco is what's in here, with the fine sea salt and the Fiji water. I used to have to rest my bowl on a heating pad in the winter to get any type of fermentation going, because my house, we don't really turn on the heat here in California in the winter, and it'd be so cold. Today's a very warm day, so you can already feel, as I'm doing this, you can feel the strands tightening, and you can feel bubbles starting to form in the dough because it's warm out. So that's my story so far, and I'll get back to you with the bread as it goes through this process. So that's what it looks like. We need to put a lid on this one, let it rest, and we're going to do stretch and folds on the pizza dough. Oh, hold on. Okay, we've got that all mixed up. I got my shower cap wet. This is what your shaggy dough looks like. Okay, messy. I'm gonna let that sit. We're gonna do stretch and folds. And I'm gonna put away my starter. Remember, when you feed your starter in the morning, you either have to throw out half before you replace the flour, or you have to use it. So I'm using it today. If you decide that you want loads of starter, it's going to get huger and huger and huger. Is huger a word? And then your house is going to be filled up with sourdough to the roof. So that's why they have this portion called discard. But discard is also the stuff that you're using. So I put this sourdough starter, which is fresh, into the bread and the pizza. And now it's going to go back to bed in my refrigerator. And if I decide to cook tomorrow, I'm gonna wake it up, and I'm gonna put a 1-to-1 ratio, which is I'm gonna weigh this and then add equal parts water, equal parts flour, maybe a little bit more flour than water. And then I'm gonna watch it bubble up and dome before I use it. So that's how we're gonna wake it up. So right now, we're putting our lids on it. A lot of times if it's out in the house, just to make sure nothing gets in it, I have these sink protectors, so as it stays out in the air when I'm letting it dome, I put drain protectors on top of it, and I reuse them. And you can get a bag for like $4 off of Amazon or wherever, and that will keep anything, like if you're in and out of the yard like I am with dogs, they have flies and bees and all sorts of stuff when you open the door. We live in a nice area that has lots of nature, and that nature wants to come in. So I like to protect the sourdough starter to make sure no little gnats or anything get in it. And those are nice little lids. They're meant to stop you from letting any sourdough starter go down your drain, which will solidify and turn into cement. And then your husband or partner will kill you because you'll be calling the plumber. So before you start in this venture and you have things like this that's going to go in a bowl of water, make sure you have a sink protector on. I'm going to do the stretch and fold right now on our first bowl and take that shower cap off. A lot of people will have a bowl of water. I use this bowl for my starter, so I'll just get my hands wet because I don't want to go over to the sink. right here, and that way my hands won't stick to the dough as I'm reaching in. Oh, that's not the right one. That is the bread. Red is bread. Blue is pizza. So that looks very pretty. So we're just gonna reach up, pull up on a corner, and flip. We're gonna quarter turn, reach in with 2 hands, pull up. I always sing like if I'm nervous. I was ready to break the bowl there. We're gonna reach up and flip it over. And reach up and flip it over. So if you found that you missed a corner that's still stuck to the bowl, just reach up and flip it over. Okay, that's a stretching bowl. We're gonna put that shower cap on. We're gonna pause here because I'm gonna get out my ingredients because I'm gonna make sourdough discard chocolate chip cookies, which I've never made before, so another first. So you get to see if they fail or if they're successful. I usually just make plain old chocolate chip, but because I have lots of discard out in the fridge and nobody's asking me for any starter, I'm gonna use it for some cookies today, and that way you can eat them all week. So pause here. Hey everybody, I'm back. I figured since the kitchen's getting dirty, why not make it really dirty? Chocolate chip cookies are my husband's favorite, so we're gonna make some. So this is 2 sticks of butter, supposed to be softened. It's not quite softened yet, so I chopped it up. So I'm using salted butter, so I will not be adding any salt. That's the risk you take when you don't want to go back to the grocery store. I'm gonna add vanilla in with my butter, 1 teaspoon. I'll just eyeball that. And it's supposed to be 1 large egg, but I'm putting in 2 small. And we're gonna get that going. And we're gonna put in, this is 200 grams of sugar. Brown sugar will make it chewier, white sugar will make it probably loftier. I like chewy, so I did 125 grams of brown and 75 grams of white, or you could just use a cup measurement, which is half a cup of both, and you'll be fine. So in goes the sugar. So we're gonna let that mixer with the paddle mixer do some of the work and start it up. Okay, we're gonna put it on low because we don't want it to fly out. You can see that this mixer's been around for 20 years. It's a little bit wonky. So we got that mixing. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to bring it over. We're gonna turn it up. Get that gooey stuff running. I'm not a patient person, as you can see. Never have been. So we got that creaming up. The sugar's probably grinding the butter in there, make it pasty. So the next thing we're gonna add, while it's working so hard, is the flour and the starter. So we'll put in the starter first. The starter is half a cup or 125 grams of sourdough starter. Oh, that's not working out well. Let's pause that for a second. All right. Put that bad boy on pause. Again, I have lots and lots of sourdough starter in my refrigerator because I don't like to throw it out. I want to use it. So I'm going to scrape that out. I'm going to probably take some of my flour and put it in here to make sure I get everything out of the bottom. So I'm going to take this flour and I'm going to put it in here because the flour will attract the starter. It will stick to the starter that's left in this cup. And that way I won't lose any. And if you're trying to clean your hands while you're doing stretch and folds, you can reach into a bag of flour, get your hands covered in flour, and go over the trash and stick your hands in the trash and wipe off the flour that way, because what will happen is all that starter will stick to the dry flour. I saw that on a bread maker's channel that does the bird neck slapping method, which is interesting for other kind of breads. This is 2 cups of flour, white, all purpose. So I'm gonna put that again in the starter. Use my chopstick to scrape off the paddle because I wasn't smart enough to turn the paddle off while I was mixing things in, because again, I'm not a patient person. Pour that flour in. I'm gonna take it off the bowl for a second. Okay. Now, slip that back on, okay? All right. Get that last little bit of flour in there. Get it going. So we're gonna get that working. This is gonna go in the refrigerator. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder in here that we're gonna add in. We're gonna pause, throw that in, and then we're gonna let it run again. I need a new mixer. Strange. Okay, here we go. Okay, seems better. So, it's going. Some of that butter wasn't softened enough yet. I highly recommend taking it down a notch to get it room temperature. And then if you have unsalted butter, which most bakers do, the salt ratio is 1 teaspoon of sea salt. But I don't think I need that because the butter is all salted. So I'm not going to put that salt in because that kills the rise. And I want my cookies to be fluffier and chewier. Okay, so I'm going to hold the camera over the bowl. I'm going to let you look, because how can you do any of this stuff without looking, right? There we go. Okay. My cameraman is off for the day. So now we're going to add the chocolate chips. I don't know if you guys have noticed lately, it seems that chocolate is starting to taste like oil or vegetable oil. I used to use the lovely Nestle Toll House, which I love. And I've noticed that different chocolates are greasy now. And because I eat a lot of chocolate, I'll put some chocolate chips in my hand and put some raisins in there and say, oh, they're healthy, I got raisins in them. I'm what I would consider a fine connoisseur of chocolate, not anything else, and I can taste the difference. So I bought Ghirardelli, which I think these are lovely. But when you're out there, let me know in the comment section if you think chocolate's gone to holy hell, because there's a lot of chocolates that I'm like, I'm not eating that anymore. There's a place, I'm gonna give a quick plug to a Danville chocolate store owner named Ricardo. Danville Chocolates, delicious. He has his own store here in Danville. He plays pickleball with us. So if you have an opportunity to swing by there, they have caramel apples. You have kids out for a holiday. It's a great place to stop by. So I'm gonna throw these in. We're gonna put it on really slow because otherwise it will chop it up. Mixture, no wonder my mixture's broke. Here it is, chunking away. All right, and that's it. So we're gonna lower this down, and this is gonna go into a container in the fridge. And when I want cookies, I just take an ice cream scoop, put 4 blobs on a pan, throw it into 375 for 10 to 11 minutes. Check the cookies doneness, put them on parchment paper so I don't have to worry about cleaning out the pan and the chocolate that melts to the bottom. And my kids love them, my husband loves them, we all eat them, and that way I have a whole container of dough. I'll taste it. Fabulous. My daughter made chocolate chips last time she was home, chocolate chip cookies. And she goes, taste the batter. And I said, you're missing baking soda. She goes, how do you know that? And I said, because I've made them my whole life. And she's like, oh my God, I did forget the baking soda. So it's nice to have those measurements out and double check your list. A lot of times I'm reading a recipe to tell you what I'm doing, even though I've done it a million times. I don't remember that, just like I don't remember phone numbers anymore. I just have you in my contact list. So the only phone numbers I know are my family phone numbers. That's a shame. I used to be able to memorize every person I knew's phone number. So I'll tell you another story when we do the stretch and folds, and I'm gonna pause right here. Okay, we're moving forward on our recipe. So this is what the dough looks like. We're gonna put that in a container, and it's gonna go in the fridge for at least an hour. Again, 375 is the correct temperature. Parchment helps. That way you don't have to wash the pan. You can put it right back in. I'm all about not cleaning stuff up because I'm a messy person. A lot of times my kitchen looks like a meth factory. A lot of times I get baby wipes and I put some vinegar on them, and that dissolves some of the flour as we go, and that way it doesn't harden and make it awful to clean it up later. Eggshells, you saw me that I saved them. I will mash these up with my hands, and these will go in my plants. I don't know if you know this, but magnesium is in eggshells, and if you can't go to the bathroom, you can eat eggshells. A lot of people will bake them, pulverize them, and eat them as supplements because they have all sorts of nutrients. You can do the same thing, and after you've rinsed them out and put them in your dog food so your dogs get vitamins that you don't have to buy. I just put them in the potted plants because it seems that my indoor plants seem to thrive with, I put coffee grounds in them, and a lot of times I'll have a pitcher of water and I'll take my coffee grounds in the morning, and instead of putting the coffee grounds in the trash, I'll put it directly in the pitcher of water. And then as I water all the plants in the house, I pour coffee grounds over them. And I do the same thing with the eggshells. Like, why buy something that you get for free? I just bought a bunch of vegetables for the yard. Last year I planted some tomatoes that were beautiful and ready to pick, and then an animal came in and ate them all. It was so sad. So I ground these up, and they're gonna go in a plant. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick, and then we're gonna do what I would call the coil folds, which really, if you're into ceramics, coils mean that you're going round and round. I have no idea why the sourdough bakers call it coiling, because it is not coiling, folks. It's not circular. It's more like folds. So we're gonna stretch and fold the bread, and we're gonna do coil folds on this one, which is the pizza. So I'm gonna pause to wash my hands. Okay, wash my hands. We're gonna reach in first. We're gonna do some stretch and folds. Quarter turn, pull up, stretch, flap it over the top. Kind of like a guy with a bad comb over. Reach down, pull up, turn. 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 Now some of this didn't catch off the edge of the bowl, so I have to reach down and stretch and fold those sections that I missed, because it's not always a perfect square. You gotta look to see where your dough is stuck and unstick it, because you're trying to make a big giant ball, and fold it up. Okay, so that is the bread in the gray bowl. Got the shower cap on. And then we have the pizza. The pizza, we already did the stretch and fold. So we're gonna do the coil method on this. And this is where you reach to the center. Ooh, my hands are not wet enough. Hold on. Off screen. Get your hands wet. Okay. Reach into the center. Pull up. Pull, 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 pull. Try to get it up. Woo, baby, that's long. All right, try not to tear it. And then you rock it back and forth and put it down. Rotate a half turn. Get those pieces that were attached that didn't come off, where it's like the Borg. Resistance is futile, right? You gotta reach in there, unstick it. 2 hands in the middle, pull up. Whoa, now that time it came undone. Now fold, fold, fold. Okay, half turn. 2 hands in the middle. All right, do you see how it's not coming down anywhere near as far? The first time it was like 3 feet long. This time it's like 12 inches long. So when it starts, you don't want to rip it, but you do want to kind of shake it down. Woo! See how it's stretching? It's still got some folds. So we're gonna let it go. We're gonna turn it, reach down on that ball. My hands are getting dry, even though I wet them. All right, this is the last one because it's resisting. It doesn't wanna stretch as much. So that's when you just leave it alone. You don't wanna tear the top of the surface. You're trying to get this lovely kind of balloon-shaped tension to the dough, so it will catch all those bubbles and lift and be beautiful in your Dutch oven. In the meantime, I put some rice flour in my Benetton's, and then I took my silicone rollers, which nobody commented about whether they're healthy or not, and those are going to be ready when we go through the series. So we have probably 4 more coilings for the bread, and at least 3 more for the pizza. When I'm done with the pizza, what I'll do is I'll separate it out, put it in a big plastic container, and chunk it up in what I think are like 250 grams, so I can make a family pizza every time we go, or if we have company, I can portion it out and make big pizzas. The bread, I'll probably just make 2 loaves because I like a bigger loaf, and then I just cut it and freeze it. So that's what we're gonna do with these. What I'm gonna do is tell you a quick story about being geographically undesirable. So I told you about my husband and I meeting. We're dating at the office, and he lives, probably about an hour away from me. And that's physical traffic, even at night. He lives in Reston. I live in at that point in time, I'm living in, Woodbridge, which is very far away. And anybody that's been to DC traffic knows that that's a very bad drive. It can go from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, because DC traffic is always effed. It's horrible. So I'm glad to be here where there's no traffic. So we had a nice evening out, and he's driving me home to my condo. And the reason I have a condo instead of an apartment is because I had a big German Shepherd dog. And he's like, why can't you stay the night? I'm like, no, I can't, because I have a big German Shepherd that has a time limit that he'll rip up my house any minute past 8 hours. He's gonna shred my couch, and I'm gonna come home to Springs or something like that. So I need to get home. And he's like, okay. So he's driving me back to my condo, and on the way home, on the left side of the road, right before we were literally 1 minute from my residence, I see a car accident with a young girl crying on the side of the road and a dead deer there. And we rolled down the window and say, are you okay? And she's like, I'm okay. And and I said, we need to help her because we're both police officers before we were agents, and we're probably this is probably our second year in the bureau. He's like, we're not police officers anymore. I'm sure she called 911. I'm like, well, what if she doesn't have a phone? Like, he's like, she has a phone. Like, leave her alone. And I'm like, no, pull over, pull over. He goes, I got to get up super early in the morning, like at 5 a.m. This is when he was on the fugitive squad, and he chased lots of criminals. You would catch them in bed before they woke up and have a warrant. He's like, I got to get up. I got to be out the door before 5 tomorrow. I can't do it. He goes, if you want to go help her, like your car is at home, just drive back. I say, okay, fine, I will, like that. And he's like, you're just gonna, like, don't get involved. And I'm like, she's a young woman that's on the side of the road. Somebody should help her. So he drops me off at home and he proceeds to head home. So I pull up and I go, are you okay? And she goes, yeah, I probably need a ride. And I said, okay, well, let me take you home if you want. She goes, well, I can't because the car is completely ruined. I have to stay here with the tow truck. And I go, I'll stay with you. I said, what about the deer? She goes, I'm not sure if she's dead yet. And 2 hunters came by and said that she was still alive. And they said that she was pregnant. And I said, what do you mean she's pregnant? And they said, well, she has a baby inside of her, and that's why they didn't take her for meat. And I said, well, is the baby still alive? And she goes, I don't know. And now I'm all in, right? Like, I decide, like, I'm gonna go check the deer. So the deer has just expired in front of me. And I look, and I pull up her leg, and you can see the movement in her belly. And I said, I think the baby is trying to get out. Like, look at her belly. And the girl goes, yeah, what are you gonna do about it? And I said, I have a knife in my car. And she goes, are you gonna cut it open? I go, well, it's not gonna get any deader. She's like, okay. So I go into my car and I pull out a knife and I carefully pull the skin back and start sawing very slightly along the belly of the deer where I see this movement. I put my hands around what I feel is moving, and I'm pulling the skin back and I'm slicing as thinly as I can to get to the middle where I believe there's a baby deer. So I carefully do this, and sure enough, I do a C-section on a dead deer. I know that's hard to believe, and I am not a hunter. I don't know what got into me or possessed me to do this. So I pull out the mass, and it's 2 baby fawns. Unfortunately, they're not going to survive because they're too premature. And I try to give mouth to mouth, and now I'm covered in twin baby deer blood, head to toe. Like, and now the girl's really crying, like, because not only did she have an accident, but I've really made a mess of things, because if I would have saved the deers, I would have been a hero, but instead I have 2 baby fawns that I couldn't revive. And she's just about in hysterics, and I'm covered in blood, and we're still waiting on the tow truck. And the next thing I know, I see 3 police cars and an ambulance coming. And this is, at this point in time, it's probably 1:30 in the morning. And I'm like, wow, they're flying like a bat out of hell. Where are they going? Well, apparently somebody saw me covered in blood, and they called the police thinking it was a horrific car accident, and it's me just trying to do a C-section on the deer. And they roll up with a gurney coming to get me, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's not my blood. And they're like, whose blood is it? And I said, well, down there on the side of the road. And she goes, where is it? They're rolling the gurney. I'm like, you don't need the gurney. And they're like, what do you mean we don't need the gurney? And I'm like, well, she's dead. And they're like, we still need to revive her. And I know she's unrevivable. And they're running as fast as they can. And they realize it's a deer that they're running towards, and that I'm completely fine. And they're like, how did you get covered in blood? And I said, well, there were baby deers in the mama deer, and I was trying to rescue them, but they were too premature for me to let them survive, so I couldn't revive them. And now one of the ambulance paramedics is a woman, and now she's sobbing, and the female driver is sobbing, and I have really effed things up. And the police officers are like, well, why did you try to do that. And I'm like, well, I thought I could save it. And I completely made a mess. So I come back and I tell my boyfriend, now my husband, like what kind of mess I made of the whole evening. But I was able to give a young girl a ride home. And he's like, that was such a bad idea, which again, I'll tell you that I am the bad idea fairy. So, completely true story. I know that my life is filled with oddities that seem wildly crazy, and I would say that's probably because it's my life and not somebody else's, and I get involved in things where I should just keep to myself and not get involved. I'm going to continue to make this bread and the cookies. I'll post pictures on the post to see what they turn out like. And if you're still watching me after that, then you might be a little insane too. Anyway, have a lovely day, and I'm going to finish cooking, and we'll see you later.